The invitation to my grandson's wedding was printed on heavy, cream-colored cardstock. It looked elegant, expensive, and completely perfect. But an hour before the ceremony began, I made a phone call that turned that perfect day into a legal crime scene. I didn't scream, and I didn't make a scene. I simply canceled the check that paid for the venue and revoked the liability insurance that allowed the doors to open. They wanted a picture-perfect wedding without the embarrassing woman who paid for it. So I gave them exactly what they could afford without me. Nothing. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. Also, let me know in the comments, have you ever been excluded from an event you paid for? I'd love to hear your story. The smell of a landfill in July isn't something most people can tolerate. To me, the mixture of diesel fumes, wet cardboard, and compacting trash smells like success. I stood on the ridge of Sector 4 of Miller Waste Management, watching the bulldozers reshape the landscape. My boots were caked in mud, and my safety vest was stained with grease. This company was my life's work, built from a single rusted truck and my late husband's stubborn refusal to quit. I was 68 years old, and I had been running this operation for 42 years. Bill and I started with nothing but a dream and a second-hand Mack truck that broke down every other week. I remember the night that truck died on Highway 9, steam pouring from under the hood like a dragon breathing its last. Bill crawled underneath with a flashlight between his teeth while I held the tools and prayed. We fixed it with duct tape, a prayer, and sheer willpower. That's how we built everything. One breakdown at a time, one solution at a time. Bill passed 8 years ago, but I still talk to his photo every morning before I leave for work. Frank, we've got a situation with the compactor on truck 12, someone shouted over the roar of the engines. It was Frank, my operations manager for 30 years. He had lines on his face that matched the roadmap of this city. He knew every alley, every dumpster, and every secret this town threw away. "I'm on it, Frank," I yelled back, wiping sweat from my forehead with the back of a gloved hand. Frank wasn't just an employee to me. 30 years ago, Bill hired him when nobody else would. Frank had just gotten out of prison, a young man with a record and no future. Bill looked him in the eye and said, "Everyone deserves a second chance. Don't make me regret this." Frank never did. He became the most loyal, hardworking man I've ever known. My phone buzzed in my pocket, vibrating against my hip. I pulled it out, squinting against the harsh sun. It was a FaceTime request from Sloan. Sloan was my grandson Hunter's fiancée. She was 26 years old, beautiful in a manufactured way, and obsessed with her personal brand. I took a deep breath and tapped the green button. "Barb, oh my God, where are you?" Sloan's voice was high-pitched, echoing slightly. Her face filled the screen, perfectly lit, her makeup flawless. She was sitting in what looked like a bridal salon, surrounded by swatches of fabric. "I'm at work, Sloan," I said, my voice raspy from the dust. "Somebody has to pay for the wedding, right?" Sloan wrinkled her nose, a gesture that was supposed to look cute but just looked condescending. "Ugh, I can literally see the dirt on your face through the screen. It's so gritty." "It's called work, Sloan. What do you need?" "Well, we have a tiny emergency," she said, examining her manicured nails. "The Rosewood estate needs the final deposit for the catering cleared by noon today. Or they release our date. Hunter said to call you because his card got declined." Of course his card got declined. My grandson Hunter was 28, and his official title at my company was VP of Operations. In reality, his job was mostly looking busy and trying not to break anything expensive. I paid his salary, I paid his credit card bills, and apparently, I was paying for this tiny emergency. "How much is it, Sloan?" I asked, signaling to Frank that I needed 5 minutes. "It's only $10,000. That's like nothing for someone like you, right? You probably spend that on truck parts or whatever." We decided to upgrade the napkins to imported Belgian linen. The domestic ones were just too yellow. I need a true, desaturated oatmeal color. Oatmeal color. I looked around at the mountains of trash I managed every day. I looked at the men and women sweating in the heat to keep this city clean. And she was worried about oatmeal napkins. I'll wire the funds, I said, feeling that familiar tightening in my chest. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was disappointment. Great, thanks, Barb. Oh, and please don't FaceTime me back until you've showered. It's kind of ruining my vibe. She paused, then added, Oh, and Barb? We need to talk about the seating chart later. I have some ideas. Something in her voice made me uneasy, but I pushed the feeling aside. She hung up before I could answer. I stared at the black screen of my phone, ruining her vibe. I put the phone away and walked back to where Frank was inspecting the hydraulic line. Everything okay, boss? Frank asked, looking at me with concern. He was the only one who still called me boss with genuine respect. Just wedding expenses, Frank. Apparently, American napkins aren't beige enough for the influencer lifestyle. Frank chuckled, shaking his head. Kids these days. They want the kingdom, but they don't want to build the castle. Frank wiped his hands on a rag, his expression turning serious. Actually, Barb, since we're talking, I need to tell you something. I'm thinking it's time. I stopped walking. I knew this day was coming, but I wasn't ready for it. Time for what, Frank? Time to hang up the keys. My back isn't what it used to be. And with Hunter taking over more responsibility, well, I think the company is moving in a different direction. There was a sadness in his eyes that broke my heart. Frank had taught Hunter how to throw a baseball. He had let a 6-year-old Hunter honk the horn at the big rig. Frank, you know you have a job here as long as you want one. Your family. I know, Barb, and I appreciate it. But if the boy is going to be running things, I don't think I fit in the picture anymore. He didn't say it, but I heard it. He didn't respect Hunter. And worse, he knew Hunter didn't respect him. We are going to throw you the biggest retirement party this company has ever seen, I said firmly. I want every driver, every mechanic, every admin there. We're going to celebrate you properly, Frank. Frank smiled, a genuine, crinkly-eyed smile. That sounds nice, Barb. Real nice. I'm putting Hunter in charge of it, I decided right then. It will be good practice for him. He needs to understand that this company isn't about trucks. It's about people. Frank looked doubtful, but he nodded. Whatever you say, boss. I walked back to my office trailer to wire the money for the oatmeal napkins. I told myself it was for Hunter's happiness. I told myself that once they were married, things would settle down. I didn't realize that I was funding my own erasure. That night, alone in my house, I sat with a cup of tea and looked at Bill's photo on the mantel. What would you say if you could see them now, Bill? I whispered. Hunter has your eyes, but I don't know where the rest of him went. The silence that answered me felt heavier than usual. I thought about my son, David, Hunter's father. He died in a car accident when Hunter was only 6 years old. I remember holding that little boy at the funeral, promising him that Grandma would always be there, that Grandma would protect him. Maybe I protected him too much. Maybe I gave him everything, except the one thing he actually needed. The understanding that nothing in life comes free. 2 weeks later, I arrived at the bridal shower carrying a gift box wrapped in silver paper. But before I left the house that morning, I stood in front of my bedroom mirror for a long time. I was wearing a simple black dress, appropriate for any occasion. But around my neck, I wrapped my most treasured possession. It was an electric blue silk scarf. Bill bought it for me on our 25th anniversary, just months before his heart gave out. He used to say that blue was the only color that could compete with my eyes. I touched the soft fabric and whispered, "Wish me luck, old man." On my way out, I paused at his photograph in the hallway. "I'm going to meet the woman who's marrying your grandson," I told him. Try not to haunt her too badly. The invitation said the theme was neutral elegance. I didn't realize that meant the room would look like a psychiatric ward from a futuristic movie. Everything was beige. The balloons were beige. The tablecloths were beige. Even the cookies were frosted in agrum, sandy color that looked entirely unappetizing. My phone buzzed just as I walked in. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was local. Mrs. Miller? This is Principal Thompson from the Bill Miller Technical Institute. I had donated money to build that school 5 years ago in Bill's memory. Yes, Principal Thompson, how can I help you? I wanted to discuss a potential scholarship fund. We have so many deserving students, and I thought perhaps we could meet to talk about expanding the program. I watched Sloan across the room, surrounded by her clone-like friends, all holding phones. I would love to discuss it, I said. But right now, I'm at my grandson's wedding events. Can we schedule something for next month? Of course, Mrs. Miller. I'll have my assistant reach out. Thank you for everything you do. I hung up, not knowing that this conversation would matter more than I could imagine. Sloan was holding court in the center of the room, wearing a silk dress that cost more than my first truck. She was surrounded by her squad, a group of women who all looked like copies of each other. They were holding up their phones, recording every movement for their followers. "Barb," Sloan called out when she saw me. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "You made it." She scanned me from head to toe, and her smile faltered when she saw the scarf. "Hi, Sloan," I said, stepping forward to hug her. She stiffened, turning her cheek so I wouldn't mess up her makeup. "Who is this?" one of the clones asked, looking at me like I was a lost tourist. "This is Barbara," Sloan said quickly. "She's a distant relative. She helped out with some of the logistics." Distant relative. Helped out with logistics? I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. I wasn't Grandma. I wasn't the woman who wrote the check for this entire event. I was a distant relative. "Nice to meet you," the girl said, losing interest immediately. "So, Sloan, tell us about the venue." "The Rosewood is impossible to book." "Oh, I know," Sloan gushed, flipping her hair. "We had to pull so many strings. But you know me, I don't take no for an answer. My vision was just too strong to be denied." I stood there, clutching my silver gift box. Her vision was funded by my bank account. Her strings were my connections. I spotted Hunter across the room, looking uncomfortable in a linen suit that was slightly too tight. He was holding a glass of champagne, avoiding eye contact with me. I walked over to him, my heels clicking on the hardwood floor. "Hunter," I said. He jumped slightly. "Hey, Grandma. Glad you could come." "We need to talk," I said, keeping my voice low. "Did you book the hall for Frank's retirement party? The date is next Friday." Hunter sighed, rolling his eyes toward the ceiling. "Grandma, seriously? Not now. Sloan is stressed out enough as it is." "This isn't about Sloan. This is about Frank. He gave 30 years to us." "Did you book the hall?" "I meant to," Hunter said, taking a large gulp of champagne. But Sloan needed me to drive her to the city for her final dress fitting. And then we had to meet with the videographer. I just got busy. "You got busy," I repeated. "Hunter, Frank is retiring in 6 days. We have nothing planned?" "I'll order some pizzas or something." Hunter waved his hand dismissively. "Why does it matter? He's just a driver." "He's practically a janitor with a license. He doesn't even have LinkedIn. He's basically invisible. He'll be happy with a beer and a handshake." The room seemed to go silent, though the chatter around us continued. "Just a driver. Janitor with a license." I looked at my grandson. Really looked at him. I saw the soft hands that had never changed a tire. I saw the arrogant tilt of his chin. I saw a boy who thought money appeared by magic, not by sweat. "Those just drivers built the trust fund you're drinking out of," I whispered. My voice was shaking. Hunter looked annoyed. "Grandma, don't start with the back in my day lecture." Times have changed. Nobody cares about loyalty anymore. It's all about networking. It's a party. I'll handle it. Just try not to embarrass me today, okay? Embarrass you? The scarf, he said, gesturing vaguely at my neck. It's really bright. It clashes with the aesthetic. Sloan is practically hyperventilating looking at it. Before I could respond, Sloan appeared at my elbow. She didn't look happy. Barb, can we talk? Privately? She pulled me into the hallway, away from the cameras. What is that around your neck? She hissed. It's a scarf, Sloan. It was a gift from Hunter's grandfather. It's blue, she said, as if that was a dirty word. Electric blue. My palette is sand, stone, and whisper white. That blue is aggressive. It's going to ruin all the photos. It's a scarf, Sloan, I said again, my patience wearing thin. I'm not taking it off. Sloan took a step closer, her eyes narrowing. Look, I appreciate the money. Really, I do. But this is my brand launch. I mean, my wedding. Every detail has to be curated. You look like you work at a carnival. She reached out and tugged at the silk. Just take it off. Put it in your purse. Please. For Hunter. I'm doing this for you, Barb. You'd be so uncomfortable around all those young people. I'm protecting you from embarrassment. I looked at her hand on my husband's scarf. I looked at her desperate, shallow eyes. And then I looked past her, into the room where Hunter was laughing with her friends. He was ignoring the grandmother who raised him after his father died. No, I said. I pulled the scarf from her grip and smoothed it down. I am a guest at this party, Sloan. I am not a prop in your photo shoot. Sloan's face turned a shade of red that definitely clashed with her beige theme. Fine, she snapped. But don't expect to be in the official group photo. I can't have that blue monstrosity destroying my grid. She spun around and stomped back into the party. But before she disappeared, I saw her lean close to Hunter and whisper something. Did you get her to sign it yet? Hunter shook his head, looking nervous. Sign what? I stood in the hallway for a moment, listening to the fake laughter inside. I touched the cool silk of the scarf. They wanted my money. They wanted my connections. But they didn't want me. I left the party without giving them the gift. It was a vintage watch for Hunter, one that had belonged to his grandfather. I sat in my car in the parking lot, my hands gripping the steering wheel. A memory surfaced, sharp and unwelcome. Hunter was 7 years old, standing in my office at the company. His small hands were clutching a rayon drawing. It was crude, the way children's art always is, but I could see what it meant. 3 stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. Him, me, and Bill. Grandma, look what I made for you. His voice had been so bright, so full of hope. I had glanced up from my desk, from the contract I was reviewing. That's lovely, sweetheart. Put it on the fridge. I'm working right now. The light in his eyes had dimmed. He left the drawing on my desk and walked out slowly. I found it weeks later, crumpled in the trash. He had thrown it away himself. Had I done this? Had I taught him that work mattered more than people? That money was more important than love? I gripped the steering wheel tighter, fighting back tears. My phone rang. It was the general manager of the Rosewood estate. Mrs. Miller, he said, his voice professional and warm. I'm calling to confirm the final insurance details for the wedding next week. As you know, with a historic property like ours, the liability coverage is extensive. I know, David, I said, staring at the front door of the house. Is everything in order? Yes, ma'am. Since you attached it to your corporate policy at Miller Waste Management, you have the highest level of clearance. It covers up to 5 million indamages. Without that corporate backing, we wouldn't be able to host an event of this size. The fire marshal is very strict about these things. Good to know, I said. Very good to know. Is there anything else, Mrs. Miller? No, David, not yet. Just keep the paperwork handy. I hung up the phone. I didn't drive home. I drove to the office. It was Saturday, and the yard was mostly quiet, but I knew Frank would be there finishing his logs. I walked into the break room. Frank was sitting there with a cold coffee and a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. "Hey, boss," he said, surprised. "Thought you were at the fancy shower." "I was," I said, sitting down opposite him. It wasn't really my style. I looked at this man who had hauled trash in blizzards, in heat waves, in floods. "Frank," I said, "we're not ordering pizza for your retirement." "No?" "No, we're doing a barbecue, right there in the yard. I'm grilling, and I'm bringing the good steaks, the dry aged ones." Frank grinned. "Now you're talking my language." "And Frank?" "Yeah, boss?" "Hunter isn't invited." Frank looked at me, his smile fading slightly, then returning with a knowing nod. "Understood." I spent that afternoon planning a party for a man who deserved it. Meanwhile, my grandson was planning a life he hadn't earned. I thought I had reached the limit of my patience. I thought I knew how low they could go, but I was wrong. The real insult was waiting for me on the morning of the wedding, and it would come in the form of a legal document. The week leading up to the wedding was a blur of logistics and silence. Hunter didn't call me. Sloan didn't FaceTime me. They assumed the ATM was working, so they didn't need to speak to the operator. On Friday, we held Frank's retirement barbecue. It was loud, messy, and perfect. The smell of charcoal and ribs filled the equipment yard. Drivers were telling stories, laughing until they cried. I wore my boss apron, flipping steaks and handing out beers. For the first time in months, I felt like myself. I felt respected. When I handed Frank his retirement check, a bonus I wrote from my personal account, he teared up. It was separate from the company pension, a thank you that came from my heart. "You didn't have to do this, Barb," he choked out. "Yes, I did, Frank." "Loyalty is a currency," I told him, loud enough for the younger drivers to hear. "And you're the richest man I know." Hunter was conspicuously absent. The crew noticed. They didn't ask, but the glances they exchanged said everything. The future CEO couldn't be bothered to say goodbye to the past. That night, as I cleaned the grill, I received an email from Sloan. Subject: Seating chart, final, V5. I opened the attachment on my phone, squinting at the small screen. I zoomed in on the layout of the reception hall at the Rosewood. Table 1 was the head table. Table 2 was Sloan's family. Table 3 was VIP influencers. I scrolled down, and down, and down. I finally found my name, Barbara Miller. Table 19. Table 19 was located in the back corner, directly behind a structural pillar. It was next to the swinging doors of the kitchen service entrance. I stared at the screen. I was paying for the venue. I was paying for the food that would come out of those kitchen doors. And they were hiding me behind Apilar. I didn't reply. I didn't call to complain. I simply printed the seating chart and pinned it to the corkboard in my home office. It was evidence. Saturday morning arrived with a clear blue sky. Perfect wedding weather. I dressed carefully. I chose a champagne-colored suit, neutral enough for Sloan, but tailored enough to show I had dignity. And yes, I packed the blue scarf in my purse, just in case. I drove to the Rosewood estate, pulling my modest sedan up the long gravel driveway. It was lined with century-old oaks, their branches forming a canopy overhead. The valet looked at my car with mild disdain before taking the keys. "Name?" he asked. "Barbara Miller," I said. "I'm the grandmother of the groom." "Ah, right. Go on through." I walked into the foyer. The place was breathtaking. Vaulted ceilings, crystal chandeliers, marble floors. It smelled of expensive lilies and old money. My money. "Barb!" It was Hunter. He came rushing out of the groom suite. He looked frantic. "You're here. Good." He didn't hug me. He grabbed my arm and pulled me toward a side room. "We need to talk. Now." "Hello to you too, Hunter. You look handsome." Yeah, thanks. "Listen, Sloan is having a meltdown. Is it the napkins again? No, it's you. He closed the door to the small library we had entered. Sloan was sitting on a velvet sofa, staring at her phone. She didn't look up. What's the problem? I asked, smoothing my jacket. Sloan finally looked at me. Her eyes were cold. Calculation had replaced panic. Barb, we need to be realistic, she said. My following has doubled in the last month. This wedding isn't just a family event anymore. It's a networking opportunity. It's a content launch. Okay, I said slowly. And your brand doesn't match mine. She reached into a folder on the table and pulled out a single sheet of paper. The paper was printed on Sloan's custom stationery. Her logo, a stylized S in rose gold, was embossed at the top. The font was elegant, the margins perfect. Even my humiliation was branded. I need you to sign this. I took the paper. It was a document titled Guest Conduct Agreement. I started reading, my hands beginning to tremble. Clause 1. The undersigned agrees to refrain from appearing in any professional photography or videography. Clause 2. The undersigned agrees to limit interactions with VIP guests to simple greetings. Clause 3. The undersigned agrees to remain in the designated family overflow area during the ceremony and reception. I looked up. Family overflow area? The back room, Hunter mumbled, looking at his shoes. It has a live feed of the ceremony on a TV. It's really comfortable, Grandma. There's AC. You want me to watch your wedding on TV? From the back room? At the venue I paid for? Sloan stood up. It's not personal, Barb. It's just, look at you. She gestured vaguely at my face. Your skin is so leathery. And your hands. They look like you've been digging in the dirt. I have been digging in the dirt, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. That dirt paid for this dress. That dirt paid for that ring on your finger. And we appreciate it, Sloan said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. But we can't have you in the photos. It confuses the narrative. My followers aspire to effortless luxury. You look like effort. If you really loved Hunter, you'd want him to be happy. Don't you want him to be happy, Barb? There it was. The manipulation wrapped in a guilt trip. I had seen this technique before, in business negotiations with people who had no leverage. Effortless luxury, I repeated. I looked at Hunter. Is this what you want? You want to hide your grandmother? The woman who bought you your first truck? The woman who paid for your college? Hunter sighed. Grandma, please, just sign the paper. It makes Sloan happy. And if Sloan is happy, I'm happy. Don't be selfish. Selfish. The word hung in the air like smoke. I looked at the paper again. Then I looked at my grandson. I didn't see the little boy I loved. I saw a stranger. A weak, ungrateful stranger. So let me get this straight, I said. If I don't sign this, what happens? Sloan crossed her arms. Then you can't stay. The security team has a list. If you're not on the approved list, you'll be escorted out. And frankly, if you're not going to cooperate with the vision, maybe you shouldn't be here at all. I see. I placed the paper back on the table. I didn't crumble. I didn't cry. I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. It was the same calm I felt before firing a dishonest employee. It was the clarity of a business decision. You're right, Sloan, I said. My aesthetic is all wrong for this. I turned to Hunter. You have made your choice, Hunter. I hope she's worth it. So you're leaving? Hunter asked, looking relieved. Yes, I'm leaving. I turned and walked to the door. Wait, Sloan called out. You're not going to make a scene on the way out, are you? Don't talk to anyone. I looked back at them one last time. Don't worry, Sloan. I won't say a word to your guests. I'm just going to make one phone call. I walked out of the room. I walked through the glittering foyer. I walked past the guests who were starting to arrive. They were all young, all beautiful, all holding phones like weapons. I got into my car. I closed the door. The silence was heavy. I looked at the clock on the dashboard. It was 10 a.m. The ceremony was scheduled for 11 a.m. I sat there for a long moment, my hands on the steering wheel. My thoughts drifted to David, my son, Hunter's father. The night he died, I got the call at 2 a.m. A drunk driver had crossed the median on the highway. David was gone before the ambulance arrived. I remember driving to the hospital in a daze, not believing it was real. And I remember 6-year-old Hunter at the funeral, his small hand gripping mine. "Grandma, where did Daddy go?" "He went to heaven, sweetheart." "Will you go to heaven too?" "Not for a long time, baby. Grandma's going to be right here. I'm going to take care of you. Promise?" I promise. I had kept that promise for 22 years. I had paid for his education, his car, his apartment, his job. I had given him everything, except the one thing that mattered. Consequences. I pulled the insurance folder from my glove compartment. The paper was thick, official, with the blue seal of the underwriter in the corner. $5 million in liability. My signature at the bottom, dated 6 months ago. I ran my thumb over the ink. This piece of paper was the only thing standing between Sloan's vision and a pile of legal rubble. What would Bill say? I closed my eyes and tried to hear his voice. And then I did. "Barb, you can't love someone into being a good person. They have to choose it themselves." I picked up my phone. I didn't call my friends to complain. I didn't call my sister to cry. I called my insurance broker. His name was Mike, and he picked up on the second ring. "Barb? Everything okay? Isn't the big wedding today?" "Hi, Mike," I said. "I need to make a change to the corporate policy, immediate effect." "Okay. What kind of change?" "You know the rider for the event at the Rosewood Estate? The comprehensive liability coverage for today's date?" "Yes, I have it right here. 5 million aggregate." "Cancel it." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Barb, I don't think I heard you right. If I cancel that policy, the event is uninsured. The Rosewood requires that certificate to open their doors. It's in their contract." "I know the contract, Mike. I read it. It says the event must be insured by the host entity. That's Miller Waste Management. That's me. And I am officially determining that the risk is too high. I am removing my company's liability from that property right now. Send the cancellation notice to the venue manager immediately." "Barb, if I do this, they'll shut it down." "The fire marshal gets automatically notified for a venue of that size. It's a mandatory reporting protocol." "I know, Mike." "Is everything all right?" I looked at my hands on the steering wheel. They were rough. They were calloused. They were the hands of a worker. "Actually, Mike," I said, watching a group of influencers walk toward the front door, "everything is finally perfect." Send the notice. Done. You'll get the confirmation email in 30 seconds. Thanks, Mike. I hung up the phone. I started the engine. I didn't drive away immediately. I drove to the end of the driveway, parked on the public road, and rolled down my window. I wanted to see the fire trucks arrive. I didn't have to wait long. 10 minutes after I hung up with Mike, my phone started buzzing. It was Hunter. I watched the screen light up with his name, vibrating against the passenger seat leather. I didn't answer. Then a text appeared on the screen. "Grandma, where are you? The venue manager is acting weird. Come back." I took a sip of the lukewarm coffee I'd brought from the gas station. It tasted better than the champagne inside the Rosewood. At the 12-minute mark, a black SUV marked Fire Marshal turned into the driveway. Its lights were flashing silently against the morning sun. 2 minutes later, a sheriff's cruiser followed. The contrast was almost artistic. The pristine, manicured lawns, the soft beige balloons bobbing in the breeze, and the aggressive red and blue strobe lights cutting through the neutral aesthetic. My phone rang again. This time it was the venue manager, David. I let it go to voicemail. I wasn't the host anymore. I was just a bystander. Inside the venue, as I learned later from the viral videos, chaos was unfolding with delicious speed. David, the manager, had received the automated cancellation notice from the insurance carrier. In the state of California, a commercial venue operating a gathered event of over 200 people without active liability coverage is effectively a fire hazard. It is an illegal assembly. Zero tolerance. I could imagine David's face. He was a stickler for rules, a man who measured the distance between forks with a ruler. Uninsured risk was his nightmare. From my vantage point on the road, I saw the first ripple of movement. Guests were spilling out onto the front portico. They looked confused. Some were holding drinks. Some were holding phones. Then came Sloan. She stormed out the front doors, her massive tulle skirt bunching around her legs. She was screaming at a man in a uniform. It was the fire marshal. Hunter was trailing behind her, looking like a puppy that had just been kicked. I rolled down my window a little further to catch the sound. "Do you know who I am?" Sloane's voice carried across the lawn. "I have 200,000 followers. This is a private event. You can't just shut us down. This is going to ruin everything. My content calendar is planned for the next 3 months." The fire marshal, a large man who looked like he had zero patience for influencers, crossed his arms. He pointed at the building. Then he pointed at the parking lot. Eviction. I watched as the sheriff's deputies began guiding guests toward their cars. It wasn't a violent raid. It was administrative. It was bureaucratic. It was the most boring, unsexy way to ruin a party, which made it perfect. My phone buzzed again. "Hunter?" "Grandma, pick up. The police are kicking us out. They say the insurance was pulled." I finally picked up the phone. "Hello?" "Grandma, oh my God, thank God." Hunter sounded like he was hyperventilating. "There's been a mistake. A glitch. David says the corporate policy was rescinded. You need to call Mike right now and fix it. They are literally sealing the doors." "It wasn't a glitch, Hunter," I said calmly. Silence. The kind of silence that is heavy and suffocating. "What?" "I canceled the policy." "You what?" "I canceled the policy. Risk management decision." As the CEO of Miller Waste Management, I determined that the event organizer, that would be you and Sloan, had created a hostile environment that excluded the sponsor. "Grandma, are you crazy? It's my wedding." "No, Hunter. According to the document Sloan made me read, it's a brand launch. And I don't sponsor brands that are ashamed of me." I saw Hunter on the portico. He froze, phone pressed to his ear, looking out toward the road. He spotted my car. "You're doing this because of the contract? Because of the photo ban?" "I'm doing this because you fired me as your grandmother," I said. "You told me to leave. You told me I was embarrassing. You told me I was just an ATM. Well, the ATM is out of order. Permanently." "Fix this!" Sloan shrieked in the background. "Tell her to fix it." "I can't fix it," I said. "The cancellation is processed. Reinstating a policy of that size takes 48 hours and a new underwriting review." "Your wedding is over, Hunter." "I'll sue you," Sloan yelled, grabbing the phone from him. "I will sue you for everything you have. Emotional distress, sabotage, tortious interference." "Sloan," I said, my voice dropping an octave, "you're welcome to try. But I have a signed document from you stating that I was not a participant in the wedding party. Just a guest. Guests don't have a legal obligation to provide million-dollar insurance policies. You wanted effortless luxury? Here's the effort. All of it. Gone. Have a nice day." I hung up. I put the car in drive. As I pulled away, I saw Sloan throw Hunter's phone onto the gravel driveway. It shattered into pieces, just like her aesthetic. I drove slowly, watching the scene shrink in my rearview mirror. The fire marshal was putting yellow tape across the entrance. Guests in designer clothes were wandering around the parking lot like lost tourists. And somewhere in that chaos, my grandson was learning his first real lesson. Nothing in life comes free. I didn't go home. I went to a spa. I turned off my phone, handed it to the receptionist, and booked a 3-hour deep tissue massage. For 3 hours, I didn't think about napkins. I didn't think about liability. I thought about my shoulders, which had been carrying the weight of ungrateful children for far too long. When I finally turned my phone back on, the world had exploded. I had 47 missed calls. I had 112 text messages. But the real action was on social media. One of Sloan's friends, a girl from table 3, had live streamed the entire eviction. The video was trending on Twitter and TikTok. It was titled, #WeddingFail. Groom's Grandma Savage Revenge. I sat in the spa lobby sipping cucumber water and watched the video. It showed Sloan screaming at the police. It showed her calling the fire marshal a low-class rent-a-cop. It showed Hunter crying, actually crying, while trying to pick up the pieces of his shattered phone. But the comments were the best part. Wait, the grandma paid for everything and the bride tried to hide her? Team Grandma all the way. The bride literally called the fire marshal low class. She deserves to get shut down. I looked up the venue. That insurance cost like $50,000. The grandma pulled the plug? Legend. My mother-in-law did the same thing to me at my wedding. I wish I had a grandma like this to fight back. This is every family gathering with entitled in-laws. I felt this in my soul. Sloan hadn't controlled the narrative. She had become the narrative, and it wasn't the one she wanted. I drove home to my quiet house. I made myself a cup of tea and sat on my porch, wrapped in the blue scarf. The evening air was cool and smelled like jasmine from the neighbor's garden. Around 8 p.m., a car pulled into my driveway. It was Hunter. He looked like a wreck. His linen suit was wrinkled, his was gone, and his eyes were red. He walked up the steps, looking like he expected the door to be locked. "Grandma?" "I'm here, Hunter." He sat down on the step below me, putting his head in his hands. Sloan left me. I took a sip of tea. Did she? She said I couldn't control my family. She said I humiliated her. She took an Uber to her parents' house. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. I wasn't, really. A memory flashed through my mind, sharp and unwelcome. Hunter was 7 years old. It was a week after his father's funeral. I had found him in my garden, carefully picking dandelions. "What are you doing, sweetheart?" "I'm getting flowers for you, Grandma." He held up a fistful of yellow weeds, his face so serious. "Daddy said when ladies are sad, you give them flowers. You looked sad, so I picked the prettiest ones." I had cried then, holding him tight. This little boy who had just lost his father, thinking about my feelings. Where did that boy go? When did he become this stranger sitting on my porch, crying about a woman who only loved his wallet? "How could you do it, Grandma?" he asked, looking up at me. "How could you just destroy it all?" Everyone was there. My friends, my colleagues. "You destroyed it, Hunter." I just finalized the paperwork. But it was just a signature. Just a stupid piece of paper asking you to stay in the back. Why couldn't you just do it for me? "This is your fault, Grandma. If you had just signed the paper like a normal person, none of this would have happened." I set my teacup down. I looked at my grandson, this man I had loved since the day he was born. "Because I raised you better than that," I said quietly. "I raised you to respect the people who built the road you walk on. Frank, me, your grandfather. We worked until our hands bled so you could have soft hands. And you used those soft hands to sign away my dignity." Hunter flinched. "I didn't mean it like that. I just wanted peace." "You wanted the money without the obligation, Hunter. That's not how life works. And it's certainly not how my company works." Hunter looked confused. What do you mean? I pulled an envelope from my pocket. It had been prepared by my HR director an hour ago. This is for you. He took it, his hand shaking. He opened it. Termination of employment? He whispered. Effective immediately, I said. Reason: gross misconduct, failure to uphold company values, disrespecting senior leadership, and financial irresponsibility. You're firing me? From the family business? It's not a family business anymore, Hunter. It's a business. And you are a liability. But what am I going to do? My cards are canceled. Sloan is gone. I have nothing. I looked at my grandson. This was the hardest part. Every instinct in my body wanted to hug him, to write him a check, to fix it. But fixing it had broken him. You have your health, I said, standing up. You have a college degree I paid for. And you have the opportunity to learn what it actually feels like to earn something. Start there. Grandma, please. Good night, Hunter. I walked inside. I stood at the door for a long moment, my hand on the lock. Then I turned it. Click. I watched him through the peephole. He sat on the steps for a long time, his shoulders shaking. Then, finally, he stood up and walked to his car. For the first time in his life, he was walking alone. I went to Bill's photo on the mantel. Did I do the right thing? I whispered. The silence didn't answer. But somehow, I felt him there. I felt his hand on my shoulder. I felt his voice in my heart. Tough love is still love, Barb. He'll thank you someday. I hoped he was right. 3 months later, the scandal had faded, as internet scandals do. Sloan had rebranded herself as a victim of toxic family dynamics. She was selling self-help ebooks about surviving narcissistic in-laws. The irony was not lost on me. I blocked her on everything. Hunter was working. Not for me. He got a job at a logistics company in the next county. Entry level. Dispatch. Frank told me he saw him the other day. He looks tired, Frank had said. Good, I replied. Tired is honest. And honest is something he hasn't been in a very long time. It was a Tuesday morning, crisp and cold. The leaves were turning gold and dread, falling like confetti across the yard. I drove my truck, not the sedan, the pickup, to the vocational school on the south side of town, the Bill Miller Technical Institute, named after the man who believed everyone deserved a second chance. I stood on the stage in the auditorium, looking out at 200 young faces. These weren't influencers. They were future mechanics, welders, plumbers, and drivers. They had grease under their fingernails and hope in their eyes. I adjusted the microphone. When my husband and I started our company, we didn't have a brand strategy. We had one truck and a lot of debt. We didn't care about aesthetics. We cared about getting the job done. I paused, looking at the check in my hand. It was for $200,000, the exact amount that would have been wasted on imported flowers and beige napkins. There are people in this world who will tell you that your work is dirty, I continued. They will tell you to hide in the back room. They will tell you that you are embarrassing. I saw a few heads nod in the audience. They knew. They had heard it before. My husband Bill used to say something that I've never forgotten. He said, "The people who build things are worth more than the people who just buy them." I believe that with all my heart. I am here to tell you that the critics are wrong. The world doesn't run on hashtags. I runs on you. It runs on the people who show up, who fix what is broken, and who clean up the mess. I held up the check. This is a scholarship fund for anyone who wants to learn a trade, for anyone who isn't afraid to get their hands dirty. The applause started slowly, then built into a roar. It wasn't polite golf claps. It was real. It vibrated in my chest. After the ceremony, I walked out to the parking lot. Frank was there, leaning against his new truck. His personal truck, bought with his retirement bonus. "Nice speech, boss," he said. "Thanks, Frank." A young woman walked up to us. She was wearing coveralls and steel-toed boots. She couldn't have been more than 19. "Mrs. Miller?" she asked shyly. "Yes?" "I just wanted to say thank you." "For the scholarship. I want to be a diesel mechanic. My boyfriend says it's not a job for a girl. He says it's unladylike." I reached into my bag and pulled out the blue scarf, the electric blue silk that had started a war. "Here," I said, handing it to her. "Wear this. Grease washes off, honey. But dignity? That's permanent. And if your boyfriend doesn't like it?" The girl smiled, taking the scarf. "I know," she said. "Cancel him." Exactly. I watched her walk away, tying the bright blue silk around her neck like a flag of independence. Frank opened the passenger door of his truck. "Want a ride to the yard, Barb? I hear the coffee is fresh." "I'd love one, Frank." I climbed into the truck. The seat was high. The engine rumbled beneath me. It smelled of diesel and hard work. It was the best smell in the world. Before Frank pulled away, I looked at the dashboard. Tucked into the sun visor was an old photograph. It was faded, the colors washed out by time. Bill stood in front of our first truck, young and proud, his arm around my shoulders. We were both covered in grease, both grinning like fools. I reached up and touched the photo. "We did good, Bill," I whispered. "We did good." Frank glanced at me, but said nothing. He just smiled and put the truck in drive. The road stretched out ahead, golden with autumn light. I wasn't a distant relative. I wasn't a checkbook. I was Barbara Miller, and I was exactly where I belonged. Driver's seat. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe for more. Have you ever had to teach a tough lesson to a family member? Or have you been excluded from something you worked hard to pay for? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your story. Thanks for watching.